Good evening. Welcome to this regular meeting of the Jefferson County Board of Education. Mrs. Johnson, I think you have some guests to lead us in the pledge tonight.
Thank you for having us tonight. Tonight we have our representatives from student government. We have our president, Dominic Perino. We have our secretary, Sean Swartz. And we have our treasurer, Blake Rome. And they are all from our 5th grade.
Excellent. Welcome, gentlemen. We invite you to stand and join us. And when you're ready, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, great job. So tell us, how did you get these offices?
We had an election.
You had an election?
So everyone in the school had a chance to vote at lunch when every table would be called, and you could have a chance to vote, and whoever got the most votes would win, and there were usually about 3 people running in each office.
Well, congratulations. So all 3 of you had to campaign in school, huh? Great. Well, good job. Have a great school year. Thank you for being here.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, very nice this evening. Thank you. Thank you, North Jefferson. Madam Superintendent?
No comments, sir.
Approval of minutes. We have a motion on the minutes from the last regular board meeting.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any questions, clarifications? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. No citizens' comments?
No.
Okay. That takes us to the consent agenda tonight, huh? Wow, you must be running this meeting.
You think so? Let's pretend she is.
I'll try not to take that personally. Consent agenda.
No changes.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Wow,
You
in
can
stereo.
pick whichever one you'd like.
Any questions or comments on the consent agenda? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Wow, I've never been this fast. I don't know. I'm already lost.
You're going to slow down in a second.
New business, sir.
New
yes, sir.
business. Okay.
Actually, not necessarily.
Okay, so we have action on approval of an educational cooperative agreement.
Actually, this is approval from the board for me to act as your representative to negotiate educational service cooperative agreements with other school systems. As you know, we posted, there are 2 documents posted on board docs. One, which was just an overall explanation for clarity for folks who may not have been following along with the legislation that was the dissolution of RESAs, and that required school systems, if they wanted to purchase services collaboratively, to enter into educational service cooperatives and create agreements around those. So our RESA has been doing a great deal of work around looking at each individual service that was previously provided through RESA, and many times that provision was mandated. We were ordered by the state, thou shalt purchase these driver training services through RESA. Thou shalt purchase these IT services through RESA. And we weren't given a choice in the matter. With the dissolution of RESAs, there was both the blessing and the curse of here, go make this up yourself. And by the way, we're going to take away the $3 million that helped underpin these RESAs and fund their base. However, we have a number of services that we do believe are more cost effective if purchased through a collective agreement. For instance, one of the services that currently runs through RESA 8 is Head Start. That is a enormous federal grant that we currently have a cooperative on. Us, Berkeley, and Morgan County all receive Head Start funding. And right now we run that through RESA 8. So we have one federal ID number, we have one set of payroll, we have one reporting mechanism. To break those apart triples the administrative cost that we have for doing that, requires us all to go through the certification process with the federal government. It wouldn't be very cost effective, time effective. So that would be an area where we would want to enter into an agreement with Berkeley and Morgan. An example of an arena where we have looked at cost effectiveness and made a determination that we could be more cost effective providing services locally is IT. Currently, or previously, the state required that we pay a fee of $8 per student based on your child count into RESA in exchange for IT services. Well, that was enormously helpful if you're Hardy or Grant or Hampshire. Here we have a full-time network specialist. We have a full IT department. We have a lower student to device ratio than almost anyone else in RESA 8. So we had sufficient staff to be able to provide those services independently and more cost effectively. So that's not something that, with the removal of the mandate, we would continue to purchase through RESA. In essence, what I am seeking from the board is, number one, we will continue to participate in RESA as long as it exists for those services that are cost effective at this point. At this point, without an educational cooperative, we continue to participate in RESA for Head Start so that we have funding for that. We had a meeting earlier tonight, actually, where we've done some reconfiguration of the administrative portion of RESA to lower those costs so that we can ensure that they extend their services long enough for us to get all these educational service cooperative agreements done for each different service that we want to buy into. That will be a several month long process. But there is a half-time rather than full-time executive director, rather than having a full-time treasurer. We'll be purchasing those services on an ad hoc basis from Berkeley County. There have been several moves in terms of reductions of secretarial staff to reduce the administrative footprint of RESA so that the funding that we do have can sustain for longer. So right now, I am simply seeking my board's approval to negotiate educational service cooperative agreements for individual services as those come up. And I will bring them back to the board as we negotiate those. But I have to have your permission to enter into them as your agent on your behalf.
So before we get questions, let's get a motion to consider this.
Second.
Thank you. Questions for the superintendent?
I had one. When I was reading through that, it seemed to me that, at first I understood that it was going to be Jefferson, Berkeley, and Morgan, and one other. I think there were 4, but now it's going to be all 8 of the RESA 8 counties involved here. Is that correct?
Every one of the counties is going to every one of the counties, as we've gone through and I showed you a checklist of all of the different services, and you have a description of each one of them. All 8 of the counties have agreed that they want to collaboratively purchase at least one or more of these. And then what will happen is that counties will opt in or out of different portions of those services. And the idea, which we're continuing to flesh out and work with the State Department, they still haven't even given us the template for writing these educational service cooperatives, is that currently 4 of the existing RESAs have completely folded shop. They've stopped delivering services altogether. They no longer exist. And the counties that they served now no longer have an outlet to gain those services except individually. And they're scrambling a little bit. The thought was there's some advantages to being the 800-pound gorilla in the room. I mean, we have a very robust substitute training program. We don't pay for it. The individuals who want to obtain a substitute's license pay for it. But we have all the infrastructure, the trainers, the billing model, everything set up through RESA 8. We continue that as an educational cooperative, and we can continue to get those services, and then our educational cooperative can sell that service out to these other counties that don't have one. In terms of, okay, if you're in the educational cooperative, the per person rate to get a substitute license is a certificate is this, but if you're not in the cooperative, you're somewhere outside, it's this plus an administrative fee to keep our cooperative overhead costs down. So basically, it's going to start running a little bit more like a business. But those are the kind of things that we're working through. But all 8 of those counties have at least one or more, and sometimes several of these sort of mix and match services that they want to buy into.
And it could be outside the RESA as well. I mean, if
Yes, sir.
Cobb County or somebody wanted to participate in something that Berkeley and Jefferson are working on, they could do that.
Gary, our superintendents, all 8 superintendents sat down and said, this service works for Hardy County. This is, their superintendent, Bonnie, went through and said, these are the good ones for Jefferson County. So the piece, they looked at each little piece of it and picked the pieces.
No, I understand that part, but what my question was, maybe I didn't make it too clear, but it takes a certain number, whether it's 2 or 10 counties, to go together to make the cooperative.
Yes,
to
sir.
have so many actual members. Beyond that, it doesn't make any difference. I mean, all 55 counties could be taking a service from that entity. But what I'm asking is how many counties are forming the co-op?
Currently, all 8 of the former RESA 8 counties wish to enter this co-op. We have had some interesting discussions with other counties whose RESAs collapsed and no longer exist about whether or not they enter into our initial co-op, and the thinking on that, they're not quite as far along, and we have some questions about geographically, because once you're in a cooperative agreement, by law, by designation, your superintendent and someone on your board has to attend those meetings, has to be an active participant in it. So part of the question came up, if we start one of these ESCs with 55 counties, are you going to require that we all meet once a year? And, so we have some questions about operationally how that would work. And, quite frankly, I think the state's working through it as best they can, but it's another one of those cases where the legislators passed it, and now they're making the folks on the ground work it out on the fly.
And once again, I would like to say that our RESA, or whatever you want to call it now, is way ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, I think the 4 that stopped, they got overwhelmed. We've been meeting every other week since July. Every other week. I was on the phone with Manny twice last week. It was just the time that it takes to work through all these services, and what are the implications of this, and if you go in, it's $4.50 per student, but if you don't go in, it's $3.50 per student, and just working through all of those nuances, service by service, county by county, and we're nowhere near done yet, but we're to the point where we've been told that they've made a lot of progress on creating the template for an educational service cooperative, and we really want to be prepared to create an agreement, and we simply need a validation confirmation from our board that you have an interest in those in the arenas in which they are cost effective for us.
Are there going to be multiple co-ops? Like, let's say there's a co-op for substitute training, and then there's a co-op that 2 counties want to participate in. And then there's a separate co-op for bus driver training where 6 counties want to participate in. And then so we may end up with 20 different co-ops, depending on the mix of the counties that want to participate.
It's all how you look
Yes,
at it, really.
And that's part of what we're trying to work through is can we create one educational service agreement cooperative, and then if you're a member of the cooperative, can you just buy in and out of individual services? Quite frankly, to get around that whole, oh my gosh, I'm a member of 27 different ESCs.
Right.
Right.
So you'd basically be recreating ERISA.
Only
An
one
unfunded
in
RISA.
which
Yeah, I don't find it.
we're cooperatively and voluntarily doing it
Instead
rather
of being
than
mandated.
With,
Yeah.
without any funding.
Yeah.
and without any funding and absent the $3 million. Yes.
Did the RISA provide any Medicaid billing assistance? to
They
us?
did, yes, sir, which we still have every intention. That's one of the ones that we've met on already, and we have every intention of continuing to purchase that service because we did an analysis, and for what we pay now for the individual who's been doing this for 24 years, we would be able to pay a halftime aide. That was the cost differential to come out, and I'm not going to find a halftime aide who is going to be capable of monitoring and correcting our Medicaid billing and codes, and working through our federal reports. So that's a very cost-effective service that we're happy to buy into. Like I said, there are others that we've pulled out of because we've looked and seen that we don't think it's going to be cost-effective.
And one thing to make you aware of is that, this is at the point we're at right now. And we will be looking at this all through the year and how it works. And we will make a decision in 9 months where we go from there. It may work and it may not work.
And we're still working through some of the RISA services were ones where the state provided grant funding, and so all of us got it, but none of us paid for it. And now the grant funding is no longer there, or they've changed the model. We used to receive funding for WEVIS support. They're no longer going to do that. The state's taken the 4 quadrants, and they will have a WEVIS person for each quadrant. Well, since our quadrant's the largest in the state, and we have 20 counties represented, we'll have one WEVIS, which for those of you, WEVIS is the Educational Information System, we'll have one for all 20 counties.
Such as it is.
Such as it is, yes, sir. Such as it is. I see you're familiar. So, I'm simply seeking your support in.
So then you would be potentially coming back to us on individual
Yes, sir.
services that others in the co-op are interested in participating in.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any further questions? And if not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, long-term sub, special ed education.
Such a crowd tonight.
Yes.
I'm
Don't
here
be
on behalf of
nervous.
Cindy Fitzwater, who's in Charleston for pupil services. So this request is a student we tried a personal care aide at the very end of the year last year, saw some progress. She's had, the aide has been there so far this year. We're still tracking progress, seeing good progress, but not quite there. So the request is to keep the aide through December in hopes that we can get to the ultimate goal of being able to remove the aid. This is something we're already paying for, we just wanted to extend it.
We have a motion.
Second.
Thank you. Questions?
So you're tracking data regularly, and when the child makes a sufficient degree of progress,
Correct.
you're going to fade that support so
Correct,
they can be a bit more
slowly.
independent.
Exactly.
And so we previously approved this for a certain period of time, and we're having to extend it?
Correct, because it's, in that bubble
Right.
of how long someone can be in the long-term position. And there won't even, I think that the aide that's doing it currently is set to continue if it's approved. So there's some continuity for the child, which will help with that, working through these last pieces of behavior that need to get under control.
Any other questions? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm next.
As do you, I have the next one as well.
I do. We have a.
You know, Cindy usually only has one.
I know that's not true. She had to bribe me with a lot of candy to come begging tonight. And this next student I know a fair amount about. This is a student who enrolled at Harpers Ferry Middle School right very near the beginning of the year. The student has muscular dystrophy, is in a wheelchair. And again, we didn't have the summer to plan for the student's needs, and we got a lot of things put in place. We got something called a higher lift to help the student get out of the wheelchair onto the toilet. That is not enough. The student actually needs a person physically there to do it. We have borrowed from Wildwood Middle a stair chair because some of those classes at Harpers Ferry are on the second floor. And in case of an emergency, that was needed. We got everything in place only to find that the child really needed more a person with them. We thought we were going to have to get a certified nursing assistant because there is toileting assistance. There is some cleanup from feeding if you know about muscular dystrophy. There are a lot of things he can't do, and it will become progressively worse. Even getting the wheelchair into a classroom and set in a way that he can actively participate and be comfortable is not something that he can do on his own. He needs some help placing it properly, getting his materials in and out of his hand. We found we have had a short-term substitute aide, and it worked out beautifully. We found out we don't need necessarily a certified nursing assistant. This is an aide who has had the basic training, understands, connects with the student. It's working beautifully. And so we would like to move that forward into a more permanent situation for this child.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Second? Questions?
Yeah, I want to know if there's a possibility, and I don't think this might be for you, Mary Ellen, but just to try to see if we can figure out if the increases that we have in special education are they more behavioral than we've seen before? Are they more physical than we've seen before? And how much are those increases coming as far as student population? So if we have X number of additional students, we need,
Is that percentage changing?
right, how is that changing over the years so that we can try to figure out, even ahead of time for next year, like we will do staffing, do everything, and then through the year we have 15 more aides that we have to add because of those needs. And so I just kind of wonder if there's a way to try to figure out, are we getting more efficient, or is, I'm thinking, yeah, this is, in this particular school, maybe isn't very handicap accessible. I don't know, like what else do we need? Or how do we do that for that too, where if we have that at Wildwood, does that make more sense? I mean, you want to keep a child in a home school, I totally understand that. How does that need to work? Or how are we positioning our people as well?
And in this child's case, it wouldn't matter the school. We initially thought from conversations with the parent access, we just needed the building to be very accessible, but we found as soon as the child got there, actually the child needs help getting accessible. It's not just that you need a bathroom with a large enough door to bring the lift in. He's not capable of using that on his own. He's not as capable as he may have been even when the parents started the discussion about what was needed. That often happens. So Cindy and I could sit down and put our heads together. Off the top of my head, I can tell you we have a lot of children who 5 or 10 years ago parents might have made a choice for them not to be in public school because of health issues, for instance, which is more my bailiwick, something I know a little more about, that now say, no, I realize I can have my child in school with these other supports and services. So there's definitely an increase in that direction. People are more aware of behavioral things than they used to be. So again, there's some more request and options in that direction, and our population's moving. I'm not sure if we really have gone out of balance at all with increased population and increased service. That would be a good number to try to track.
We do. On December, every year we have to submit a December 1 child count, and it requires that we submit a host of data around those students' type of disability. We also track those costs by disability. So some of the things that we can do, give us some time. It might be the January meeting, but you know, for us, just like Mr. Pettiford did for HR, we can sit down and give you some data that says here's how much it's increased. You know, autism rates have increased X percent over the last 5 years, whereas speech, which is a much lower cost per pupil to deliver that service than a child who arrives who has extensive, you know, physical and cognitive needs. So we can put together a report for you.
I think I know you said this, but I missed it. So, how are you currently assisting the student?
There's a substitute aide there, so it was a temporary substitute position.
Okay. Other questions? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you, and, you know, thank you for, you know, I know this demands a lot of resources, but have the opportunity oftentimes to see, you know, these students in our school system, and I think it's so important, and it's very positive, and it's positive for all the students.
Absolutely.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Dingus?
Well, it seems like I'm back every week also for the same reason. We have it's a quarter day run. Again, it's not both halves because they'll be going into school on a regular bus, and they won't be, but they need picked up half day. So it's a pre-K student that needs picked up half day. They're hoping to reevaluate this position on and on. You know, if that person isn't needed, that job will be pulled, you know, at that point. So, and it'll be posted that way so that they know that their position could go away during the year. This will be performed by one of our bus drivers who I have. This won't be an extra bus driver. Will be one of the bus drivers who I have. It's just an extra run for that bus driver.
Motion?
So moved.
And
Second.
thank you. Questions? What are we doing currently in this?
We're running a sub
Yeah.
right now, and then it'll be posted, and the most senior.
Yeah, and I'm familiar with this student. This is a special needs preschool student that this is their first school experience, and they're having some significant behavioral struggles in adjusting to the school environment, and in attempting to work through with the parent, they are unable to sustain a full day without it being very detrimental for them and detrimental for the other students. And so we're working on building their stamina by a half a day, and then hopefully by the time we get to the end of semester, they'll be able to maintain some behavioral control for a bit longer without endangering themselves or others.
Is there a need for an aide as well?
No, there's an aide in that. There's sufficient staff in the class. It's just this student struggles behaviorly, and as the day wears on,
just the bus operator is
just
sufficient.
the bus operator is sufficient. Yeah, he's simply unable to maintain all day.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you. Ayes have it. And do we anticipate an executive session?
Yes, we will have two things in executive session. One, a student expulsion and consideration, and number two, discussion of land.
So we would anticipate action then that we
Yes,
would
sir.
take in public session.
Yes,
So
we do.
entertain a motion to move to executive session, in accordance with state law regarding personnel and legal issues.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Not person, student.
I'm sorry, student. Thank you. Student discipline. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. We will anticipate coming back into public session if we take any action. Before we take a quick break, any comments from the board? Anything of this week or last? Okay, if not, we'll take a 5-minute break.
And Mr. Pettifer is